Welcome to this presentation on the basics of what an engineering report is and how you can create your own basic engineering report. Now, the goal of this presentation is to figure out what an engineering report is, as well as their intended purpose, and how you yourself can create a basic engineering report. Now, going over an overview of what an engineering report is like, we start with what is an engineering report. An engineering report is a means for engineers to communicate on development and design, the stages of creating and design, as well as the results and findings from project development and documentation on said project and subject that they are writing the report about. And this can be in any engineering field, whether it is aerospace, electrical, chemical, and so forth. There are certain criteria that engineering reports need to meet in order to help the reader understand the purpose and objective of the report. The first criteria is to clearly outline the goal of the report, usually in the abstract, regarding the purpose and objective of your research. The second criteria is to inform readers of the engineering research you're conducting, some background information, what you are conducting the research for, and anything else the reader needs to know regarding your research. The third criteria is to describe the research you've conducted. This includes a general overview or summary of your findings, the data you collected, which helps to visualize, how you collected said data, and the implications associated with your findings. Writing an engineering report is broken into 7 stages, from the abstract through the meat and potatoes of the body, and finally the conclusion. Each one of these sections follows a different set of rules to make it easy for the reader to understand the purpose and explanation of the report. The abstract essentially covers the entirety of the report in a brief manner. After the abstract comes the introduction, which essentially describes the purpose of the report, the importance of the issue or subject it's covering, and the goal. The literature review summarizes the studies or citations you're using for your report. The methodology section covers how the data in your report was gathered and evaluated. The results section describes the outcome from your findings, along with quantitative visual expressions to help the reader better process the results. The discussion section assesses and comments on the results, along for an explanation for how it could be applied in broader context. And finally, the conclusion covers what was the outcome of the entire report, along with what remains to be understood and the shortcomings of the report. Now we will be going over each of these sections and exploring them piece by piece, as well as providing an example of what they look like. The first thing that you will make, as well as the first thing that the reader will see, is your title. It must include information such as who made it, what's the title relevant to the subject, when was it made or published, what company or institution is involved, what page is it, and any other brief information relevant to the document. After the title comes the abstract. The abstract is basically the microcosm or miniature version of the report. The abstract covers everything from the purpose of the report to the conclusion in the briefest way possible. The example on the right shows a short abstract on the research paper. From the abstract, the reader understands that the report is going to be about water reactors as a possible energy alternative. After the abstract comes the introduction. The introduction includes a scope of the research that's being conducted, meaning how the report will be carried out, the purpose of the report, background information, and how data for the report is collected. The example on the right concurs with these points. The literature review is generally covered within the introduction, but can exist as its own body. The goal of the literature review section is to summarize and evaluate the literature used in your study. The methodology section, like the literature review, is generally included in the introduction, but it can exist as a body of its own. In this section, you're basically going over how you collected your information, whether it be from your studies or on your own accord with the materials and equipment you used. The example on the right provides a general overview of what this would look like. The methodology section could also include a materials list, as well as some visual cues and images about the material and equipment you're using and how you collected that information. The results and discussion section describes the outcome of your findings, using visuals, an explanation of terms and experiments, and how your findings can be used in a broader context by the reader or audience. This is generally confused with the conclusion, but it is not the conclusion, where you will find out in the next slide. The conclusion points out what was to be gained of the study, such as what was learned, what remains to be studied, and what the limitations were in the study. The research and discussion supplement the conclusion by providing summarized details and the conclusion re-emphasizing those points. The conclusion also reiterates the purpose of the essay and uses what was learned to justify its purpose. That is pretty much all I have to say for this presentation. However, there are more resources that I have provided in the description of the video that you can see. The first one is an example document provided by the University of Utah on writing technical reports. And the second one is from the Purdue OWL, the online lighting lab that provides a lot of resources for how to write any sort of essay or document. And of course, I also use these as my citations. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section of this presentation. Thank you for watching.